So let's talk about how to actually grieve a situationship or essentially limerence with somebody who you maybe had something with, but it never really amounted to something significant enough for you to feel fulfilled. So if this sounds like you, if you've been in a position where you have been dating somebody, wanted to see it through, wanted it to become something more serious, but found like it just never really came to fruition. And then it felt strange because you sort of have to grieve the breakup of something that wasn't even a fully connected relationship. Well, there's big reasons for why this is actually really difficult and painful for people. So, in this video, what I'm going to take you through is three major steps that you can pay attention to that will help you better understand how to grieve something that never fully was. So, first and foremost, we have to understand that when we are grieving and we actually like pull apart the idea of grief itself and how it works and how it affects us, we have to understand that we are not really grieving the physical things. If somebody's physical body was around, but they weren't able to chat with you, connect with you, hang out with you, do all these different things, it wouldn't be something that actually fulfills you either, right? So when we are grieving something, when somebody moves out of our lives, it's not their physical form that we're grieving. It's all of the invisible aspects of the relationship. It is the needs that they met. It is the traits they brought into our lives. And part of grief too exists within the stories that we tell ourselves about the relationship and why it never worked out. And this can cause a lot of hardship. If we tell ourselves stories like, oh, I'm going to be alone forever, I'll never find somebody like this, like that can really tear us up inside. And so when we take a look at these sort of themes or dynamics and we want to plug this into the limerence or the relationship that never fully was, the situationship dynamic, we have to understand that it's more often than not the fantasy of these things rather than these tangible aspects themselves. So when people get really attached to somebody without there being this more serious dynamic that's there, it doesn't mean that there aren't actual feelings between two people, right? Of course, that's an aspect of things. Of course, somebody can come in and maybe you're in a situationship with them for 6 months. And of course, they're going to meet certain needs for you. Of course, there's going to be certain attachments you make to them as a person. But also, where more of the difficulty in grieving lies is in the idea that people, when they're in these situationships or sort of limerence dynamics, they attach more to the fantasy of the future. They attach more to like, what could have been, what was going to be. And they often have this really strong bond that they make actually in the fantasy world. And so, what you have to do is take these three major themes of grief and how it works, the needs that we're grieving, the traits people brought into our lives or brought out in us, and these stories that we have. And we have to plug these in to the fantasy bond more than the reality of the situation, although we can do both. So, I'm going to give you an example of what this means. Let's say that you were in a dynamic with somebody where they talked about the future but never committed. So, they would say, oh, yeah, like next summer we should go on a trip to this place, or we should take a cruise together, we should do these things. Let's say they're telling you all of these exciting things that they want to do with you, and yet they are never actually taking tangible steps to get there. Well, if you're somebody who's really hopeful for the future with this person, if you're really attached to them, you might tell yourself all these stories about what that's going to look like and how it's going to go. And you may build this whole sort of fantasy bond, imagining yourself on the trip with them and all the fun things that you would do. And in these specific instances, you may have this element of bonding more with the fantasy of the future with the person than you are bonding with the person in the actual present moment. Because the person isn't necessarily fully there for you in the present moment, the way you would probably hope. But in the future, they're sort of building this fantasy. Now, you hear this referred to as things like future faking. And I find that this is something that sometimes when people are in that dynamic who are doing the future faking, they are in a position where they are looking to the future and thinking that this is a possibility, but they may not be fully committed to that possibility the way they're communicating about it, if that makes sense. And so when we try to grieve this first part, okay, on step number one here, you have to actually look at what are all of the different needs that I had projected into the future this person would meet, either of my own accord, I just hoped that this person would meet, or of the accord of that person kind of building this rich world of the future that never really seemed to come. And so I want you to, if you want to pause this, I mean, this is a really valuable exercise to do if you're trying to really get over somebody, is write out what are all of the needs that you thought this person was going to meet or that they were meeting that you really, really attached to. And I want you to put a little bit of extra emphasis and focus on the future, the needs that the person was going to meet in the future. And, some of these needs may be the need for commitment, the need for stability that they were saying, they would commit soon or they'd be interested in committing one day. It could be a need for, travel. It could be novelty, exploration, discovery. It could be the need to feel seen and heard and deeply connected to. It could be the need to build something together, to create, to express. What's important to you in a relationship with somebody. So, you want to write out all the different things that show up for you. And when you do this, these are going to be the things that, in order to actually end the grief, you have to nurture these needs within the relationship to yourself and other safe and healthy people in your life. So, what I really mean by this is there's going to have to be a whole bunch of people around you that you build these things with, right? There's going to have to be a relationship to yourself that you actually learn to meet some of these needs. And honestly, until you do, there may be this dynamic of like still trying to attach to this person from the past who was never going to really meet these needs or follow through, but that express the potential of meeting these needs in the future. And this brings me to step two. There's going to be traits or qualities as well that are going to be really important here. So there may be traits that this person brought out. Maybe they were, maybe they expressed traits of being protective. Maybe they were really funny. And so these characteristics about the person, what did they bring out in you? What traits, because you were around this person, did this person allow you to express more? One example could be if you're somebody who's quite serious. Maybe there's a dynamic of this person was really fun, sort of go with the flow, spontaneous. And maybe it brought out these aspects of yourself that are fun and spontaneous and go with the flow more. And so you found in this relationship with this person that you could express these aspects of self that were not really getting expressed in other parts of your world and other parts of your daily life. And so understanding that that may be something you're yearning for when you're grieving a person is very valuable. And it can also be, going on with this theme of the fantasy in the future, it can also be the fantasy of the future with this person, right? It can also be that you had all of these ideas about what the future would hold with somebody, and these traits that you would be able to express there, the spontaneous things that you would do, the fun things that you would do. So you want to write out like, what were all of my hopes of, well, you can start this way. You can write, what are all of the things within myself that I learned to express when around or when in relationship to this person? And then check, like, are these things that I'm actually expressing in my daily life on a regular basis? And if not, how can I do more of that? And then you can plug that into the fantasy idea as well, right? You can be like, okay, in the fantasy of the future with this person, what parts of myself was I excited to express? Was it going to be the part of myself that was more spontaneous? Was it the part of myself that was more adventurous? And so you want to get really clear with what these aspects are. And these are going to help you understand, like, when you're grieving somebody, you're grieving the parts of yourself that you would express with them, or in the fantasy, of the future that you hope to express with them, or the needs that the person met. And so we still have one more piece here, but before I tell you the last piece, if you're like, this is a lot for one video, I try to keep these videos like short and simple. The real, like, a lot of the in-depth work is in the personal development school. If you want to check out the personal development school for free, fully for 7 days, you can actually check out our Overcome Limerence course that will help you move through these different dynamics. It's really set up in this way, in a lot more detail and with the workbooks and all that kind of stuff. But you can check it out for free for 7 days using the link down below. And if you're getting more than enough out of these videos, then that's great too, right? You can always pause and like write these exercises out. So the third major step here is that you also want to make sure that you are looking at the stories you tell yourself. Part of grief is also created because we tell ourselves these really painful stories after we lose people. And it's the mind's way of trying to cope by gaining certainty. It's like, oh, if I can give all this meaning to the situation, then it's certain. So if I can tell myself it's because I was never good enough, then at least I know, at least I have certainty of knowing. But a lot of times these ideas that we project onto a situation, like the idea I was never good enough and that's why the relationship didn't work out, they're not even really true. Like a lot of the time it's, well, no, the person was emotionally unavailable, or no, the person was looking for something totally different, or no, we actually weren't that compatible in terms of what we were both looking for in our lifestyle and our future. And maybe that person was just more aware of that. And so we have to actually question some of these narratives that we stamp onto or project onto painful situations. And I want to encourage you to be somebody who does that. So if you can dump out on paper, like, what are all of these things I tell myself that are causing me pain? Like, what are all these things I'm ruminating about? Oh, I was never good enough, or I'll never find somebody like this again. Every time we tell these stories and we buy into them and we believe in them, we chain ourselves more and more closely to that person. And if we're trying to grieve and move on and heal so that we can have a beautiful future for ourselves, for our future relationships, this is us causing ourselves harm by accident, right? We're kind of attacking ourselves by doing this. So I want you to write out some of these different dynamics that might be there for you and really try to fact check these stories. Like, are these really true? And look for evidence that could oppose these things. Do you have counteracting evidence? Because that will really help you hold these things into the light and deeply understand. So that's it for this video for today. I hope this helps in terms of grieving a situationship. Again, if you want to do a much deeper dive, you can check out our Overcoming Limerence course down below for free for 7 days. And if you have any other questions about this, please let me know in the comments below. If you're enjoying this channel, please like, share, and subscribe, or give a thumbs up. It obviously really, really helps the algorithm. I would super appreciate it. And I really appreciate you stopping by, and thanks for watching.